I guess the first thing I wanted to know, because a lot of the followers of my channel are pretty new to investing. They're looking to get started out. And obviously there's been a lot of investors looking to get started with investing right now, especially after 2022. It brought many businesses kind of back down to earth. But at the same time, people are very hesitant to get started with all the fear and noise they hear around the macroeconomic environment. So I was just wondering, drawing from your obviously decades of experience, I'm interested to hear what advice would you give to new investors at a time like this? How do you advise they kind of get started with their investing?
I mean, yeah, in a certain way, if you're a new investor, if you didn't lose any money in 2022, if you weren't part of the crypto bubble, let's say, then you're in an amazing place because you're kind of starting from scratch. And so I just want to encourage you. And I would also tell you that, let's say that you're somebody who got caught up in, you look back on the last few years and decide that you invested far more or too much of your, say, investable funds into, say, crypto or something that was riding high but is now down a lot. What you don't want to do is you don't want to compound those mistakes. And so if you try something once, which is a good thing if you do it 100 times, but you only try it once and then you stop, then even if the first time it didn't work out, it would be a terrible thing to stop after just one try. We don't if we're watching our children learn to walk, we don't watch them fall over once and then say, give that a break. And so, or just to give another analogy, if that's okay, Brandon, if we think of exercise, what I've learned, or I'm still learning, is that the key to becoming fit is not so much about trying hard on your first workout or even your 10th workout. It's turning yourself into somebody who regularly works out. And so what I've learned at my ripe age is that what I need to do is reward myself after every workout. If I reward myself after every workout, don't bother about whether I run half a kilometer, 10 kilometers, if I push myself, if I don't push myself. Give myself a nice reward because that will get that consistency going. So in a certain way, investing is the same way. This is not about taking the plunge. This is not about what happened last year. This is not about, it's about becoming a person who's an investor. And if we just go to Warren Buffett, whom you mentioned, I mean, every month, every year, Berkshire Hathaway is buying pieces of America, is buying shares. Every month there's share purchases taking place. And so we should become more like that.
And what do you say to people who are particularly hesitant specifically because of, say, the macroeconomic environment? I mean, should somebody that's interested in getting started with investing, or value investing, Buffett-style investing, should they be paying attention to macroeconomics? Does it play a role in your investing, or should it just be? Do you think it's better if it's just blocked out from the decision-making process?
Well, there's a very easy and simple answer to that, Brandon, which is you absolutely should block it out and just forget that it was even there, and just realize that macroeconomics is important from a macro perspective. The people who run the country or the people who run the global economy do take important decisions. It's not a bad thing that newspapers cover it, because decisions on, say, interest rates, or a country like the UK leaving the European Union, or the World Trade Organization, or 1,000 different issues really do affect how the world economy develops. But we're operating on the scale of our own personal savings, or the savings of us and our investors, and we're operating on at a completely different scale where it kind of doesn't matter for us. All we're trying to do is we're trying to own a piece of the productive economy. And maybe another way of looking at it is if you're a mouse or if you're an ant walking around amongst elephants, you absolutely care where the elephants are, and you care where they step and all of those things. But at the end of the day, what you need to do is you need to work on building your nest. You need to work on gathering food. And it's just at such a different scale that it's not going to affect what you need to do on a daily basis. And you shouldn't allow, in that analogy, the movements of the elephants to affect what is your daily task, which is to, say, own a slightly larger proportion of the world's productive assets at the end of the day. So if there are people who are really hesitant, and look, it is a natural thing to be hesitant. It's a natural thing to be fearful. So I think that my words to that person is, don't deny your feelings, don't deny your fears, don't pretend they're not there. And the goal is not to block them out because you cannot not be aware of them. The goal is to understand that they're not relevant for the thing that you're trying to do, and to sort of like see them for what they are, which is a distraction, a very powerful distraction that, and the reason why they're so distracting is that they are relevant. In a certain way, where the elephants put their legs really does count for you. So it's not surprising that you want to pay attention to them, but you cannot affect the outcome of where their legs go. You cannot affect the outcome of where interest rates go, and what we need to do is develop the habits of the kinds of things that on a daily basis will get us closer to our goal. Just to jump from the ants and elephants analogy back to the working out analogy, some days we feel good, some days we feel less good, some days my ankle hurts, some days it doesn't hurt, some days it's raining, some days it's not raining or it's snowing. I cannot allow a focus on those things. If I really want to be healthy and fit, I just need to become somebody who works out on a daily basis, period, end of story. And so I urge you to think of investing in the same way. Your goal is to be somebody, and just to expand on that a little bit, Berkshire Hathaway is this incredible sort of educational model for us. Berkshire Hathaway's goal is to get to the end of every day, every month, every year, owning a little more of the world's productive assets, and to have a kind of like a part share in those productive assets, and to do that, no matter what the weather is, no matter where the economy is. The economy is going to go up and down. Interest rates are going to go up and down. We're going to go through recessions. We're going to go through periods of bubbles. But it doesn't matter. That ship is sailing. It has its North Star. And so that's, and so it's not so much about is now a good time to invest, is how do I become a better version, or how do I become a person who is on a daily basis more capable of investing? And to take the running analogy, is now a good time to go running versus I am a runner. I'm a guy who goes out running come rain or shine,
And that's one of the, talking about kind of detaching or acknowledging your emotions, detaching from them and making rational decisions. Obviously, there's a massive focus in your book, The Education of a Family Investor, on getting your investment mind, your environment right, your structure right. You write a great line which says, it's critical for investors to structure their environment to counter their mental weaknesses, idiosyncrasies, and irrational tendencies. My question to you is what are some, for maybe new investors, what are some practical steps that everyday investors can implement to make sure that they don't succumb to these kind of destructive mental patterns?
They could spend more time watching your YouTube channel. Well, and that's not. I say that slightly because it's fun to promote Brandon on his own channel, but also because it's I think it's a whole bunch of little steps, and the stories that get written all the little steps are kind of boring, so we don't read about them in stories because stories are written in a way to grab our attention, because otherwise they won't get read or they won't get seen or watched. But reality, God is in the details. So I think that there are 1,000 different steps that one can take to build that environment. And tuning into the right YouTube channels is one of them. The other thought that came straight into my mind, because this was part of the discussion that we had before we came live, was come to the Berkshire meetings. It's a long way to go if you're in Australia, but and you sort of say, well, why should I go to the Berkshire Hathaway meeting? I can do everything I can watch it all online. But at the Berkshire Hathaway meeting, the minute you board the plane to Omaha, you're going to start meeting people. And then when you're in Omaha, you're going to meet yet more people. And those people they're kind of all these, there's a beautiful idea in the Talmud, which is a sort of a Jewish text, which is that the Sabbath is mountains held up by threads, mountain ranges held up by threads. It's all these sort of like small rules that kind of help, in this case, helps the Jewish people keep the Sabbath. And I think that there's a powerful analogy. So there's no one thing that's going to solve the problem, if you like. There's no one great big hammer that you smash down on the nail and now you're done. It's kind of a process of constantly weaving, constantly creating, constantly thinking, how can I improve? And one of the things I've learned since the book, in the book I talk a lot about the physical environment, talk about how to set up my desk, my office, living in Zurich, all of those things. What I realize now is that while those things aren't terrible things to focus on, but far more powerful levers to pull are who you have in your life. Who do you choose to have as your closest relationships? And what I would say there is that this doesn't have to be. You don't have to call up a good friend one day and say, "Hey, I don't want you in my life because you don't think the way I want to think myself, and therefore I got to push you out." It's just about drawing the people who do think in the right way just a little bit closer, which is part of the sort of like Berkshire Hathaway idea. Going to the Berkshire Hathaway meeting. I organized a conference really in part to help me with my environment. So I sort of said to myself, how do I bring more value investors to Zurich? And I said, well, I love skiing. And so why don't I invite all the people I'd love to see to a ski trip? And so, a group gets together in the mountains. But so there are lots of small ideas, but no one big idea is going to do it.
Definitely sounds as though the main takeaway is to, try and immerse yourself or surround yourself with the people that think along that long-term rational investing kind of mindset.
Yeah, and I'll give you a very brief or a preview of a section of my letter to investors that we're just sort of like editing the final touches.
When does that come out?
We'll see. It'll go out to our investors first, and I'm allowed to share it with the public now, I believe. So it will, in the next week or 2 or 3, probably not the next week, but 2 or 3 weeks it'll come out.
Right.
And in that, I asked the question, well, how did I avoid the kind of like the tech crash that happened last year? And my point to the reader is that it's not as if I'm some genius who was able to avoid it. And I think you probably read a lot of letters in the people who did avoid it who will. I don't think that all of us can succumb to the kind of thing that people succumb to over the last few years, and myself included, Warren Buffett included. And so, we need to build fences around ourselves. We need to build the fences in the right place that lead us in a good direction, not a bad direction, if you like. And I think that just, everything's one, Charlie Munger said, everything's one damned interconnectedness after another. And pretty much everything that we do, there's an element where we could look at it and say, well, does this lead me closer to a path of intelligent investing or further away? And if it leads you closer, then do it. And if it leads you further away, then maybe you should consider not doing it. And so I've given you a non-answer to the question, but I think it's a good. We could dive into specific details of what one might do. I mean, the one that I've given you is attending the Berkshire Hathaway meeting, but really it's about getting around the right kinds of people.
And I think another big point that I took away from reading your book is, I think chapter 10 it is. It's all about trying to build a better investment process, I suppose.